Welcome back to the Teradek stage here at the Vitek booth at IBC 2014. Our next guest needs very little introduction, Mr. Philip Bloom.
Hello.
Top DP, former Sky News cameraman, once upon a time enemy outside the High Court in London.
Once an enemy, always an enemy.
Right. Phil and I go back a very long way.
Yeah.
From when I was a photographer and he was a cameraman.
In the days
when
when
he claims to be a DP and I still sort of, you know.
In the days of when we just used big cameras, you know, you were out there with yours was pretty big as well, and you were shooting your, what was it like?
His is pretty big as well.
His is enormous. Now, what are we talking about? Sorry, I'm so tired.
I'm
not
joined by Matt Allard, our technical editor as
basically,
well.
you were a snapper, and I was I was TV. You were a snapper. That's how we were termed back in the old days. And
the old days being 1990 something, basically.
Yeah, I mean, back in the news days, and things changed so much. And the moment it changed for me was when I did a news shift, and one of the snappers came up to me and said, "Oh, you've used the 5D for video. Can you tell me how to do that?" And that for me, that was like, that's it. It's now all going together.
I won't remind you of those arguments we used to have about 5Ds versus 35mm adapters.
I could still we can still argue now if you want. I want to. You're wrong, whatever your opinion is.
I seem to remember telling you that the 5D was the greatest thing since sliced bread, and it was going to do a great video, and you didn't really believe me.
Was this before I got one?
This was before you got one, and when you had less as 35, and we're doing great stuff. But to be honest, you were great. You were doing fantastic stuff. It didn't have 25p. It only had 30p.
That was the problem. Yeah.
It didn't have manual aperture. And I was saying it's the greatest thing since sliced bread.
It's very good. You have to admit though, the 35mm adapters, for all their problems, the organic nature, it was still beautiful. And they had, because they were video cameras, so we didn't have all the hideous nightmares of audio. It was still.
No, you had XLRs, you had ND filters, you had the whole lot. I mean,
did you mess around with those?
No, I came close to looking at it.
Came close
right
to looking
before.
at it. You were thinking, I might go over there. Nah.
Just before the 5D and that came out, I almost actually pulled the pin and bought one to put on my broadcast camera actually, and I'm glad I didn't, because it was right around the time when the 5D came out, literally just months before.
Because they were really, I mean, the first one, like the Pro 35, was Pro 35 from P&S Technic was so expensive, and the amount of light that you lost was huge. I mean, it was only for lit sets or working in the Nevada desert.
You still see some about it.
They are. You can. I saw it on CVP still for sale.
Anyway, look, that's not what we're here to talk about. We're actually here to talk about documentary shooting. And people may not know if they haven't been following your every move that you've kind of taken a swerve back into factual programming away from some of the other stuff you've been doing.
Broadcast, I would say. I've been doing factual. I haven't stopped doing factual, but I decided to do some more broadcast work again. Are we allowed to talk about who that's for? Yeah,
what it is?
Absolutely. I can talk about it, but I can't give you too many details about it. So it's it's an 8-part, hour-long show for the Americans. CNN producing it, and it's their first in-house production. But I'm the only person outside of CNN who's been brought in, so only freelancer. And it's an amazing series in the concept. That's the bit I can't talk about, apart from the fact that it's, it excites me enormously. It's nothing to do with news, so it's going to be an enormous amount of work, which is always, working hard is good, but it's travel. It's non-stop travel. But it's when you get these sort of to do what you love, we all do what we love, but to actually go and shoot documentaries and programs, not only that excite you, but as a story, but also visually go, oh my god, this is, and places you'd never think you'd ever go to. And that's what I miss the most about news, is that with news you literally did go to the places you would never go to, and it's not quite like this, but some of these places are so inaccessible. And to be going there and to be filming there
it's a privilege, actually. It's a privilege. I think all of us, all three of us, I think, are very privileged to have just gone and seen things that normal people in quotes that don't very rarely get to see.
Is this small crews, one-man band stuff where you've got sound recorders?
I mean, this is the biggest issue. It's something, it's you know what it's like. It's especially when you're coming from corporate. I've been doing so much corporate work, because obviously it pays the bills and lets you do the personal projects, which is the stuff that really is hugely fun. I'm used to having a sound recordist and an assistant, and I've done one episode so far. And so basically it's myself, the presenter, and a producer who shoots, and a junior producer who shoots as well. So, but basically those guys are sort of more there for the interviews, for doing like I think we're doing 3 cameras on most of the interviews, so like singles and a wide. The rest of the time it's me, and I'm doing the audio as well. Those guys are helping out with the audio, but it's so difficult, and it's one of these things. I was discussing it with Rodney Charters last night at tail end of the Super Meet after that. You've been to Super Meets before, those crazy draws, and we were just chatting away about the show and the issues I've been having with audio. And it's the age-old thing. I started off at Sky, and you were a sound recordist by name,
Matt, you started as a sound recordist, right?
We weren't really sound recordists. All the sound recordists at Sky when I started in '89, they were assistant cameramen essentially. They were there to become cameramen, but they did audio.
Yeah.
But it meant we had great audio. And when the Reuters merger came along, 5 years later, most of the sound recordists got made redundant, including me actually. But I came back the next day freelancing, and then was brought back 6 months after that. But the sound recordists were then just put on lives. So all the actual the craft, the creating was done one-man band. And you can get away with, sticking a couple of mics on somebody and getting away with that sort of stuff. But I like to hide mics. But if you're hiding mics, then you need to be, taking your time and getting that right.
And you always get, depending on the type of
and it's all that sort of stuff. And then
I think
and then it's 2 mics as well. You've got 2 inputs on there, and it's
so
hard.
you're deciding which channel you need to listen to, or you're trying to listen to both, and then you're trying to shoot at the same time.
Looking at the lighting,
it's a lot to take away.
And it is hard, and then it's got to put. It's a lot of spontaneity in the show.
Would you always work with a sound recordist if you had a choice on a show? I mean, what circumstances would you not do that?
When you don't want to be drawing attention to yourself, and when you're doing docs, you don't want to draw attention to yourself most of the time, especially if you're out filming in the public, which is most of the time. You don't want to get B-roll shots, and I used to call it GVs in the old days. I've been working with Americans too much, but B-roll shots. You don't want, when you've got a proper crew, and I'm using my F55 on the show as my main camera. I don't want people looking at the camera and they see me and they look at it. It's not what I want. But I have an A7S as well with it, and I'm shooting on that with a smaller tripod, and nobody looks at me. And so there's that huge advantage. You have a sound recordist. I say put the boom down. It's fine. We're just getting some subtle stuff. But I don't have one. And it is, the ideal world is you want a totally invisible sound man with a boom. Doesn't exist. That's the product I want to see at IBC.
Style soundy.
But that's it, because the only way to get really decent sound on the go is a boom. It's a boom pole, shotgun mic, and it is the only way. But it's not exactly subtle, is it?
No, I mean, and people do tend, unless they're very used to being on camera, for the first few hours at least, they respond very differently if you're traipsing around with a boom and guy with a pair of headphones on.
I'm using very high-end gear, and I just want the audio to sound as good as the images are looking, and it's the one thing that's stressing me out the most on everything I'm doing, is making sure I've got the best audio.
And is most of the stuff that you're shooting for this documentary sync sound, or are you recording into camera mainly?
So when we're doing the 3 camera interviews, so it's 2 microphones, 2 lav mics, and going obviously into the appropriate camera for each one. I mean, it'd be lovely if you could feed the audio into both, but there's no mixers, of course, nobody to operate the mixer. And the 3rd camera is a Rode, will be probably A7S normally, Rode Video Mic Pro, just for pluralize and just sync it up.
I mean, you say of course, but go back a few years, and the of course would have been there's a sound guy, well-paid union sound guy probably sitting there doing the job. You've been away from broadcast, you've come back after a short gap.
Yeah.
Have you noticed changes like that? Is that a change you've noticed? Is the budget thing? Is that budget, or is that just a working culture? Or?
No, because when I went freelance in 2006, and I did a series straight away for Channel 4, and a documentary series. We had no sound man. And
soundmen sort of disappeared in the 90s, I think.
Yeah. Well, actually, probably not where we're sitting, because Europe, as a general rule, seems to have. If you see a German TV news network, they're still rolling with a sound man even now, which you could argue is the way to do it. But anyway, it is geographical, where the sound man isn't dead everywhere in the world for news and documentary.
Most productions will, I mean, it depends on the company, but most production companies I've worked with, they'll want to put an assistant producer on before they put a sound recordist on. And there was this one episode where it was a woman. It was about not divorce. It's when you break up from a partner when you're not married, whatever that was called. I can't remember what that's called. My
divorcee?
No, but we're not married, and it's about getting, having rights. And so it was a documentary about that, and there was a presenter who was a lawyer. He's on TV all the time, and there was 5 women who were not married but sort of broken up with their partners, and she wanted discussion. They wanted discussion between the presenter and these 5 women whilst decorating a room. So obviously the backs are going to be all to everybody. So you can just imagine this situation. And I'm shooting on a DSR 450 DV cam, 2 XLR inputs. And so I said, okay, well I can do 2 people. And it's not going to work. Can you please get a sound recordist in for this? It's the only way we're going to make it work. And he said, is there any way you can make it work? Because there's no way we can pay for sound man. I'm like, the best I can do is put on a radio onto the presenter, stick a Sennheiser 416 on top of the camera, a shotgun mic, and just run to whoever is talking other than the presenter and do my best. But it's going to sound terrible because you're going to miss the beginning of everything there. And as soon as people interact, which is what you want, which is people talking to each other, it's not going to work. And I said, well, can you do it anyway? And I did it. It didn't work. The next day they said it didn't really work, did it? So we need you on Monday. We're going to bring a sound recorder. So we're going to do it again. And that's the thing.
So that was a real cost saving then, wasn't it?
That's the problem. It takes things. It's the same with everything. But it takes things to go wrong before you're listened to. But I don't expect to get a soundo on this, and I just have to do my best. And that's the thing.
I find it kind of sad. This is a pretty sort of high-profile series that we're talking about, and they're not spending money on a sound recordist.
Yeah, I mean, part of it is going to be logistics, because there's a couple of the episodes we're filming in places which are, we're going on tiny Cessnas to get there, and they're telling, I have to have my kit down to a really small amount. In fact, to the point where I was looking at the FS7 and holding it and asking about how heavy the battery is, finding out the EX1 batteries, oh that's good, and how long they last, and then thinking I could say probably a good 9 to 10, maybe 11 kilos if I use this on this episode rather than my F55, because I'm also going to be places where there's no electricity for 2 or 3 days, so I have to have enough batteries to last me. So those sort of things. So there wouldn't be a sound recordist. In fact, there's only going to be, on some of them, it's going to be myself, the producer, and the presenter, which is the 3 of us. And that's okay. It just means you just can't be quite so... And also, mind you, this particular episode, there's no way we'd be able to put mics on anybody anyway, because they're all going to be pretty much naked apart from a part of their...
really?
Down there.
Is that including you as the DP?
If we have to blend in, that will happen, yes.
Right.
Yes, but it won't happen.
Really?
No. I'm the presenter. Oh God, maybe the presenter's gonna have to do that. No, I don't know. But you sort of mean it's like one of those things. You're gonna need a boom. I don't know how we're gonna do that. I've just had this moment. How am I gonna do audio on this episode? These guys don't wear clothes. Anyway, that's an interesting conundrum.
It's a head-worn mic.
Oh, these.
You have to see it.
I get onto the road. Can I get some of the flesh-coloured ones?
Yeah, head ones. Yeah, that's great. Okay, what other challenges did you have while shooting? I mean, let's talk about kit, because we all like kit.
Yeah.
What did you actually shoot this thing on?
So far I've shot on the F55 is the main camera, and one of the things we want to use is super slow motion when it's appropriate, because it's nice. It is a nice production device, of course. I'm not shooting 4K. I'd try.
Why not? Interesting enough.
I pitch to shoot it in 4K. The biggest problem we have is post-production, of course. Could they deal with it? They couldn't edit the 4K, and they don't broadcast 4K, of course. I wanted to shoot 4K, and then say you do an HD edit, and then you can
do reframe options, all the stuff we've talked about.
The reframing, but I think it's much more. I think because it's, for me, documentaries like this, they are historical things. These are things you want to look back at, and it's something I want to shoot in the best possible format, especially the places we're going to. Some of these places won't be around much longer, and it's last chance to do them. But it won't be 4K. And my other issue is data management, because I'm doing the data management. And at the end of the day, offloading 4K footage takes longer than it does to do.
And when you're stuck, as you said, with carrying weight limits and stuff like that. You
drives
take an awful lot of hard drives.
I mean, it's
Simple
doable.
stuff,
It's doable. I mean, look, with the F55, I could shoot XAVC internally on the S/S Pro Plus, and stick a Samurai blade, record in ProRes in HD.
But that would just be doing it for your own benefit. Basically.
No, but that would mean I would say I'd say to them, we're editing HD, but we're shooting 4K for most of it. Obviously not the 180 frames per second, but you have the rushes to make a 4K edit if you decide to make a 4K version or sell it on, so it's there. In fact, but some of them I am going to shoot 4K for a lot of this key stuff.
But you're not handing that off to them.
I will say I'm going to have it, and so I just think it would be crazy for us not to do this. Where we're going to not shoot 4K, it feels wrong.
Is it weird for you because you generally cut a lot of your own stuff? Is it weird to just give up at that? I mean, how does that feel?
No, it's lovely not to cut your own stuff because
really?
I love editing, but I hate editing. It just, you know what it's like.
I know what you mean.
It sucks your time.
Well, Matt, you've just done the same thing. Basically, you've gone from being a staff cameraman at Al Jazeera, shoot edit, to doing a lot more documentaries still for Al Jazeera, but you're not cutting much of your stuff either.
Not cutting any of it, yeah. And it's interesting having cut for such a long time. I'm in the same boat with you. I like editing, but I hate the process of it. And it's hard because when you do cut and edit your own stuff, you have a certain style about it, and as soon as you get handed off to somebody else, your style gets changed completely. Even if you're shooting in the same style as if you had been. Yeah,
you're shooting for your own edit. You know exactly what you want.
You're shooting in your head for an edit, but sometimes what's happening is the material's getting looked at by somebody else, obviously, and then they're putting their own sort of spin on it. So
Yeah, I have the same problem. The stuff I shoot, most of the stuff I shoot, I hand off. And to me, I shoot things in a way that would be obvious, and I think, this is so obvious, the editor's totally just going to see this automatically and just cut it that way because I've just, it's all laid out for, it's even, it's almost sequenced in camera. But then quite often it comes back and it's not unrecognisable.
I mean, if the assembly can be done by somebody else, and then I come in and do that, I love that part of it. But actually, most of my paid work is not cut by myself. Most of it. It is.
Are you getting to see the edits on this documentary?
Well, I'm actually really involved in. I'm not. It's being done in the States because it's out in New York, the show, and but I am very much involved in the colour, the look of it, and also style, because what I've been doing is we've done a pre-sequence intro sequence, and we've done the first episode, and I've done edits of sequences and sections and graded them, and this is the look and style that they're going for.
On set or not set?
On location, and well, no, there was more when I got back because there was no time. But I got back, and maybe on the plane back, I was doing some stuff and giving them to them, and this is what they're basing the actual shows on, which is really nice.
And are you creating a LUT and sending to them, or you
LUTs with James Miller, my business partner, who's very good colorist. So he's been creating the LUTs. I've been giving him the stuff that some shots to work with. He's been creating LUTs. They've been given to the post-production house, and they have them. I mean, it's difficult though because there's no single LUT, as you can imagine, for like a whole thing, which is what they wanted. The post-production house. I said, "Can you send a LUT for everything?" I'm like, it's shot on 4 cameras, in fact a GoPro as well. So it's on 5 cameras, all very different.
You've got to wonder, if you send them a LUT that works and everything, what's the point of having a post-production house?
Well, exactly. So if you want to, I actually worked out. I was going through all the frames from that just one episode, and there's the best case scenario is 104 permutations of looks, exposures, and things, and like you basically put on. I personally would. I think you just work. I don't know how you edit, but if you try and grade as you go along, it slows everything down. It's nice to do a couple of tests. And that's why I work with Premiere. I'd love Premiere and Adobe to put in turn off effects button, so you can put some on there and see what it goes. Okay, that's cool.
Because at the moment you just basically have to delete them all and then I'm constantly doing that.
Unselect them all, adjustment layers,
knock it out and then put it back and undo what you just did.
And it'd be nice to be able to do that. But to actually, I never edit with LUTs on because it's just too slow. But it's it's good to be involved very much in the look of the show, because it's something that's key. Before I started the show, I did an edit, and I did a show recently just for IBC because I haven't cut a show in ages. And the way I normally do stuff is the client comes to me with what they want me to make, and then I'll give them an edit together of stuff that I've done to give them a feel of what we could do. And I did a similar thing for CNN in that I gave them an edit together of different cameras and different stuff to show them how I feel where we could go with this. And it's a nice way of doing things, and I think it's gone from that, which is nice.
What's the general shooting schedule for one episode? Is it a 30-minute show?
No, it's an hour long, so broadcast hour, so whatever that is in America, it's what, 43 minutes? 46, yeah. So, and it's a lot to do. We're doing, I mean, they're saying 5 to 6 days per episode, which is tight, but it's going a little bit longer than that. I think maybe 7. But it is very difficult. There's a lot to do.
And how fly on the wall is it? And how much is it how much of it is preordained, pre-scripted, set up?
There's people who are it's based around people, which is great, which is very much my sort of stuff. It's part of the reason why I'm involved in it. And so there are people who, characters who we're working with and interviewing. There's no sort of like randomly going up to people and talking to them as such.
But is it sort of observational as such, or are you kind of putting people into situations and
It is observational to a small degree. It's very much there's a lot of stuff with the presenter involved in it. But very much presenter led.
Yeah. We can talk about. I mean, Matt and I always disagree about this, so we don't always agree about everything.
We disagree about most things.
Most things, actually. Yeah.
I think everybody disagrees with everything you say.
That's pretty much. Well, you probably. I mean, okay, so
maybe I'm just actually right and Dan's actually wrong.
Dan's never been wrong. What are you on about? He's the host. Look, he's behind. When he's behind his desk, he's never wrong.
But if you had a choice, would you do a more observational, off-the-shoulder thing, or do you like to be locked down and creating shots that way? I mean, what's your preference for documentary?
I love a mixture of things. Just doing everything handheld and sort of that sort of stuff is not really my thing. I'm very classical in my compositions and things, so I like a lot of tripod stuff. Which obviously doesn't work for a lot of documentaries, but it can do for sequences of characters and things like that.
Sure, I mean, I guess all of us would do what we had to for a client, but it's like, what's your, if you had to choose how you would do it, how would you do it?
It is a mix. It has to be a mix. If you make everything like, on a tripod or dollies and things like that, then it becomes too polished and too unnatural in a way. And I think you need to have handheld actuality of real stuff and just go with the flow and see what happens.
Matt, so this is where we disagree. you kind of like your dollies and your tripods and stuff, right?
I'm a bit like Phil. I'm not a big exponent of the handheld. I'd much prefer to frame things up and use tripods. I can't remember the last time I saw a handheld shot on one of your packages, to be honest. It's very, very, very rare that you'll see a handheld shot. I mean, I'll do it if it's necessary, but I prefer not to do it. It completely depends on the project you're doing as to the style that's required. I did one recently in Taiwan with the Taiwan military, and that was, a lot of it was very run and gun because it was with special forces and things like that, and I used 8 cameras on that shoot because it was a whole bunch of variety of different things, from doing things underwater to doing things where I had to use a Canon Handycam that had night shot on it because we were out with special forces guys at night and there was no light and I wasn't allowed to use any lights. So it's all about just, sometimes you can't do what you obviously like. You can't make it perfect framing, but that project calls for a certain thing, and that's the way you have to just do it.
But I mean, there is a joy in finding the frame in the sort of chaos and the madness as well. I mean, I think that's got to be one of the greatest things I enjoy anyway.
Do you know what, I'm actually thinking about that, how much I did on the last episode, how much handheld, so little handheld, but I did a lot of actuality filming. Do you know what I used instead of using handheld? Movi M5. I used the Movi M5 with the A7S.
What you got there?
This is actually the A7R.
Okay.
You got the S.
I've got this here, yeah.
And it worked out really well. In inverted mode, you can do it for long periods of time. It's not that heavy when it's that way. And I was shooting it around f8, keeping my distance, in that the focus, how much is in field and depth of field. And it worked out brilliantly, actually, really well. Of course, I'm not zooming and stuff, so instead of me, when you're traditionally doing fly on the wall is you crash in and get your tights, I'm actually going in, and it adds, it's very cinematic, of course, and I like it. It's good. It's the downside is it's a hell of a lot more hard work. It really is.
Well, although probably less so than the full-on Steadicam rig and an arm and a vest. So
true, but but you're switching. So I'm doing that, then I need to get some tripod shots. All right, stand down, tripod, 55 up, on, getting this. Oh, need another handheld shot. So normally in the old days, the easy days, and the days you still do it today, is one camera, the tripod plate, this is on the tripod. Oh, getting handheld, off, on, did it, back on again. So I'd just make my life complicated.
But okay, it's interesting because you're shooting this an A7S.
Yes.
CNN are obviously accepting this A7S footage.
Yes, they are.
Interesting days, really. You know, you're actually shooting a sort of big show on a small camera.
It looks really good. I have to say, the image looks so good on that camera. I'm doing so much, actually a lot of just straight B-roll. I'm actually doing it on that rather than the 55 because it's obviously easier, quicker to run around and not knock off the shots. And it goes on my slider. You know, slider 55 is, you know, a big heavy duty one. I was nice and small, compact, and run around and get the shots. And it's just a beautiful HD image. It really is. And yeah, they've got no problems with it. I'm giving them the internal codec as well, so no external recording. Very happy with it.
And they can deal with that in post easy enough?
Yeah,
or are you having to convert that somehow?
I haven't been. No, they've taken it as it is, and it was one of these discussions before they signed on. They took on the post house. It was this this is what we're shooting on, and so it's the post house who are pitching for it.
And you're shooting XAVC or MPEG or
XAVC and XAVCS, yeah, and they're fine with it. Yeah, taking it all.
Quite novel. I mean, we were talking to some British shooters, some of our team actually this week, and in the UK it seems a lot of the broadcasters still won't accept anything other than the sort of legacy codecs, your MPEG stuff. And
no, it's really great that they're doing it. But I don't know what difference is Americans to the UK production houses, but they seem there's no problems whatsoever when we were which camera to shoot on, because most of the stuff they shoot on CNN for their in-house stuff is actually feature stuff is C100, C300. In fact, we do have a C100 on the show, and it's
What are you using that for?
That's actually one of the B cameras, and it's actually really nice.
And you find you can cut that. So you've got three completely different cameras. Are you able to cut them?
They are different. Yeah, they are different. Of course, they're different. But I use an X-Rite chart. A little X-Rite chart, little folding, and then we use those so they've got the reference. I try to match my profiles as much as possible. The sharpness is one of the things I'm making sure I'm having to dial in the sharpness on the F55 to the right amount. If you turn it off too much, it looks way softer than the C100 and the 7S. So just trying to get to the right level, so that at least does that, and then getting the profiles to match as much as possible. But yeah, it's totally doable. You can match. A good colorist can make anything match. It takes more time. So you want to try and take away as much of that work as you can.
What are you doing? What are you doing lens-wise? Are you running zooms or primes?
So it's mostly zooms. It needs to be really.
Which ones?
So on the 55, well, it depends on the 55, but it's 55. Actually, most of the time I'm going from the Sigma 1835 to the Canon 70-200 2.8. And sometimes I put 24-70 on. I just feel I seem to always go from wider shots to long-term photo shots.
I'm kind of, a lot of what I shoot is zooms. I love prime lenses. Probably you and I are obsessed, probably more than most people. Lovely prime like this, I'm going to be going, be very happy to use it. But the reality is, if things are all happening in front of you, frames are changing all the time. You need that flexibility of a zoom, and
it's too difficult. I mean, primes are lovely, and the only time I'm really shooting on primes is in lower light situations. And
how about an all-in-one zoom like the new Canon? Would you go for something like that if you had to do it all over again? If it was available?
the big ENG style one?
17-120.
No, I actually had that on the A7S when I first got the A7S.
A7S, really?
I didn't do much with it. I put it on there just for a laugh, but it's not really my sort of thing. It's I've never been a servo guy. I mean, it's got a big range, which is nice for sure, but it's heavy, big and heavy. So I'm still happy with SLR lenses for what they are. Sure, most of them don't stick with the focus all the way through, and there's no constant aperture lenses. There are not many, which actually truly are.
Well, so it's interesting that Arri and Mira's now got an EF lens mount, which is kind of a nod to the fact that people, even though they might have a fantastic camera like that, they're still going to be sticking 17 to 55s on the front of them in some instances, and they need to do that to keep the whole package weight down. So
it is. It's if you're going to be filming all day, you don't want to be having and also there's no assistance to be carrying around your flight cases, all these nice lenses which belong in there, and
maybe we should get at least a bit smaller.
It is great. You fly. You're based in where are you based?
Tokyo.
You're in Tokyo now.
Yeah.
So you have a face some issue to we all have a face some issue when we're flying. Compared to the Americans, it's a really strange issue about excess baggage and baggage allowances, and it's I don't know what it is about America. There must be some FAA thing, whatever it is, or whoever, I don't know, but it's cheaper baggage. You get better baggage allowance when you fly to and from the States.
Yeah. When I used to work there, you had if you had a valid media card, most airlines would give you your excess baggage for free.
Still?
I think that's still true.
I don't know if it's still. Certain airlines will give it to you for free.
Delta will give it mostly. Really? Which ones?
But you have to have a valid media.
Yeah, a valid
sort
one.
of card.
I'll get discounts.
But you should. I don't know. Maybe CNN.
CNN,
I'm sure must get discounts.
Yeah, but I mean, it's a constant battle for me to just get gear down to a way that I can actually check it in.
Yeah.
And Asian airlines in particular are quite strict on that sort of stuff. So
I fly. Yeah. So I'm going.
Batteries are an eternal problem. Lithium-ion batteries,
lithium polymer batteries.
Lithium poly. If you're going to go into quads and gimbals, then lithium-ion batteries, which actually, in fairness, do explode if they're overcharged, and they don't have the proper protection inside the battery.
And as you know, in China, there's a limit to how many you're like. I think it's two per person.
Yeah,
so if you go on a plane,
they've got to be less than 100. Or hour, whatever. It's
not possible. So if you're going to use like a Phantom, 2 batteries isn't going to get you very far.
Well, suddenly the FS7 looks like a very attractive camera if you're facing a situation where you can't carry V-Lock batteries or Bauer batteries in any quantity on a shoot. And that's where the C300's been very successful in my part of the world, because you don't need those big batteries for very much. So,
to give you an example of excess baggage, people don't realise quite how different it is from the States to. And airline by airline, because one of these jobs I have to fly to Australia to get to the location, and looking at the airlines, there's actually only one UK airline that flies to Australia now, and that's BA, because Virgin has stopped. They stopped in May, and BA are great. I try to fly BA most of the time in the UK because they charge per bag, not per kilo, and that's the killer. So many airlines around the world that charge per kilo unless they go to the USA, which they're not allowed to charge per kilo when they go to the USA or from the USA. So I priced up bringing, I'm not taking as much as this, but worst case scenario, 4 32 kilogram bags to Sydney. And I did this with Qantas, priced up with Qantas. Business class flights where they only give you 40 kilograms allowance, 40 kilograms of business class flight. The excess baggage was working out at $5,600 each way.
What?
Yeah. Each way. BA, who give you 3 bags on business class of 32 kilograms each, the one extra bag I think worked out as £80.
Yep.
So basically, fly BA, it costs you £80 excess baggage, which is $130, or Qantas, 5,600 each way.
Which is probably the difference between an economy and a business class fare almost.
Yeah, I mean, it's insane. It makes a huge difference, and it's one of these things. It's like, when I work with clients, I specify airlines, and the reason I specify airlines is because I know which ones screw you over, which ones don't.
Yeah. Okay. What tips do you have for aspiring documentary makers, factual programming makers?
What are you passing it to me first?
You talk. You go.
Aspiring tips.
What do you wish somebody had told you when you were starting out that you kind of learned the hard way?
I don't know. I don't think it's any one particular thing. I think you learn from experience. You learn from making mistakes. Every time you go on a shoot, regardless of how many years you've been doing it for, you'll do something and go, oh wow, that didn't really work out. I shouldn't do that next time. Or you'll learn from a situation where previously you were doing something very similar, and you go, okay, I know that worked last time, so I'm going to do this. So that's the thing. I think it's learning from your mistakes. The only way you're going to get better is to go out there and just shoot and shoot and shoot.
Well, it's true. Actually, and you talk about shooters having a repertoire of shots. Obviously they're not the same shot again and again and again, but they're kind of essentially the same shot repeated. And I think quite a lot of shooters work that way. And they just do one shot, try it, get comfortable with it, do another shot, try it, get comfortable with it, and you end up with like a
develop your own style. I think that's the ultimate thing. Don't try and copy somebody's style just because they do something in a certain way.
If you try copying his style, I mean, it's not bad, is it? It's it's okay. I mean, if you want to get work,
but don't go to a point where you're like struggling so hard to find a style. Just do something which feels and looks good to you, because my style, whatever that may be, is basically loads of other people's styles, just pulled here and here and here. I don't think there's anything, a unique style.
You probably learned from over your years working in E&G, picking up little things from different cameramen that you now combine into your own style.
But mostly now, of course, it's just watching TV, watching videos, because you'll see different things. I mean, to find a totally unique style now.
Well, I mean, okay, here's an interesting question: are there any unique styles? Actually, are we moving to the point where it all looks kind of almost as? I mean, there was a moment where there were a few people shooting shallow depth of field 5Ds, and then that had its moment, and now everybody's shooting shallow depth of field C300s, 5Ds, whatever. But you got to do that. You need to do that for a reason. You shouldn't just shoot shallow depth of field just because you can. It's an aesthetic choice for a reason. That's the whole thing about it.
There is no. Don't just try and find something unique just because because you feel you have to. The key thing is make it look good, lit well, sound good. Get the core principles first before you start going, oh, what production value can I put in here? Maybe I should use a Movi. Maybe I should shoot everything on a large format.
Well, I think so often with documentary, I think the key thing that a lot of people forget when they get obsessed with all these things is you can't miss the action. You can't actually miss the key parts of the story. Otherwise, you really are in trouble. And I'd rather have a shaky story where I have all the elements than a beautifully shot one where I've got key chunks of the actual narrative missing.
I'm using this M5 on a lot of the actuality, and if I didn't have that producer with the C100 as a B camera, who, whilst I'm making sure that it's balanced and ready to go, he's already getting some shots, and if it wasn't for him, I know I wouldn't be using this, because I'm missing stuff while this is going on. Hang on, it's not balancing. Hang on, no, that's not right. What's going on here? It's moving along. It's almost there. Hang on, wait, it's almost there. You can't be doing that. This is, normally these things are used on, very rarely on documentaries, to be honest with you. Then you'll have an assistant who's preparing it and getting it ready, or perhaps a Movi operator, and then you'll have obviously a focus puller.
I have to say, the thing that I've occasionally been pulling out are these little GoPro stabilizers, not because they're better, because they're clearly not.
It's easy.
But you can just stick one in your pocket and then grab it and run with it, and if it's a shot that only lasts 3 seconds, honestly, most people won't notice that it was infinite depth versus f8, which is what you were shooting. Sure, if it goes on for, if it's a walk and talk and it goes for 15 seconds, that's a different thing. But there are sort of a lot of cheats that are out there right now, which are quite interesting.
Definitely the key thing's the most important thing is really make sure you don't miss anything. Make sure it looks good. Make sure it looks good, but don't go too crazy. Just lit. When I say lit, I don't necessarily mean putting up lights all the time. I'm talking about lit as in making sure you are in the right place to make the most of what's available. So think when you walk into that room and something's going on, yes, there's actuality, but there's better places to stand to capture actuality.
Yeah, but this is a comment that I get this a lot from students who are trying to want to be documentary or multimedia shooters, and they don't understand that you can essentially light a scene without getting a ton of lights out. Positioning yourself is totally critical. Time of day, very important. All those sort of things. But even just thinking about light, I think there's a sort of preconception amongst a lot of people, even now, that lighting doesn't really count in a documentary. When actually, to me, for the good documentary, it's everything.
Of course, it is. Lighting is everything. There's no type of filming that lighting doesn't count. If you're a documentary filmer, doing stuff actuality, and you're setting up 3 or 4 lights in each room beforehand, then you're not doing it the right way. Not really, because sure, maybe you can, but most time you're not going to, are you? You are literally going to walk into that room, and instantly, once you've had experience, you'll know straight away. And how do you get experience? You make mistakes. You'll shoot something and go, God, I really should have stood over there, because there's the window and I would have got that much better. And you'll know next time you go into a situation like that, oh yeah, I'm going to go over there and get it better. Sometimes you have to go in the wrong place just to actually see whatever they're doing, but then you are always moving around. There's nothing wrong with that. And I think and this is it. Lighting is harnessing of what is already there,
and look for what's already there, because as you know, if you're a small crew and you're a one-man band, you're not going to have access to 20 lights. You're going to have maybe 3, and you can't recreate an environment with 3 lights.
A lot of people might look at a shot and think, he's got 3 lights there and 5 lights there and 7 there, and actually most of the time you've probably got 2 or 3, and you've just positioned them well, or none at all, or some reflector boards and some negative.
Well, what's your basic lighting setup for this show?
For this series is most of the time I'm not actually bringing any mains powered lights. A couple of small battery lights, because Most of them are out and about and stuff like that. But it comes down to weight issues, and I've been using a lot of the remote phosphor lights recently because they're lovely, but they are heavier, but they give a lovely quality of light. So like the next one we're doing is, as far as I know from the schedule, everything is outside. So I'm not bringing any lights at all.
Okay, so we look forward to seeing this stuff. We're going to have to wrap up this section of the show. It's been great to chat. Please come back and do it again.
You're welcome.
If you don't have to rush off, I might get you to stay right there. We'll get our next guest in. We'll be right back after a very, very short break.